Hi, Scott Muni on the World of Rock. Elton John is back with a new album. This time it's Reg. Reg strikes back, and it's Reg Dwight. And as we discussed earlier, we had the pleasure of sitting with Elton a couple of weeks ago at a gig he was playing outside of Chicago, a place called Poplar Creek Music Theater. Well, a wonderful time now ahead of us. Our special co-host and guest on the World of Rock will be Elton John, Reg striking back. That's what we're going to do. It's time you came back as Reg.
Yes, I suppose so.
One of the things about the music business that you've given us is the wonderful variety, something that you can really do. You've been on tour with huge amounts of musicians and sometimes alone, but when you go on stage, you don't really need the outfits and all, except that it changes you around and makes you a different person. Now, now that you had your garage sale, as I called it, I was talking about everyone in America has a garage sale when there are too many things in the house. Now, you really cleaned house, didn't you?
I certainly did, and there are a few people walking around with some really funny things on. I mean, I still got a lot of costumes left. I mean, I couldn't dump the whole lot at once. But there was extraordinary how people bought in the memorabilia section of the auction.
Part of the Elton John personality, of course, was changes. Because, you know, if you changed into a different person, a different type of person on stage. I remember once Central Park in New York when you did that wonderful concert. There was close to 1 million people, and the price was right for everybody that day because it was a free concert. And I remember when you did leave the stage, you left in your duck outfit.
Yes, which I put on the wrong way round. When I came off to change into it, my personal assistant, Bob Halley, who has got a tremendous sense of humour, was standing there with it on, hanging in his hands, waiting for me to get in. I got in and I put my legs through the armholes and my arms through the leg holes. And then I was panicking because I was stuck in it, and it was quite hilarious. And then, because when I came out, I'd never tested it out before, and I came down and sat on the piano stool, and I was so high with the back side of the duck was so high that I couldn't reach the pedal. It was brilliant. So yes, amusing things like that have happened to me over my career, and they were good fun. It's just time now. I don't feel like doing that anymore. I've done it. I've done it to the nth degree, and it's kind of like disco music. It's crap now. It was great in the 70s, but you can't do it anymore.
Well, one thing you did do, too, it won't be in the Guinness Book of Records, but you're the only person who ever went into the posh Waldorf Astoria as a duck.
Yes, I think I said.
That's for sure, so we're going to get that in the Guinness Book.
There was a sister outfit to it, Minnie Mouse, which Bob Mackie might have been. I wore that in the Forum in LA for a gig, and that was the first time I ever met Sting, and I've got a photograph of me shaking hands with Sting, which I was highly embarrassed in the dressing room with this Sting outfit that had this incredible wire tail. So, there have been some funny things, and it was good fun. But it's just time to make a change now.
One of the things we want to do in the World of Rock is talk about Reg Strikes Back, because here in the album, this is the first studio album from you in quite a while, and you had done the live album after you had surgery, and there was a time there when I know it was a very worrisome time for you and for your fans too. We wanted to make sure everything was all right and that you were going to be all right. We knew the tour had to stop at the time. And now, how do you feel? You feel like everything is back to where it should be, and you feel good about the album?
I think so. It was a terrible year, 1987 for me. I mean, actually, the voice thing was the least of my worries. I mean, the operation took 15 minutes. But I had a personally bad year. I mean, I still have a lawsuit going against England's best-selling tabloid newspaper. My soccer team got relegated, so the planet seemed to, wherever they were in line with, they definitely had it in for me in 1987. And one of the most encouraging things was changing record labels. That was going back to MCA. I didn't have a particularly good time on Geffen, and I was very pleased. And I gave them a double live album, which I was really proud of, which is the Australian live album with the orchestra. And at that time, I mean, they could have turned around and said, well, listen, we've seen your sales figures on Geffen, and we prefer a studio album and double album anyway, but a double live album. And but they believed in it, and it was great. And they told me that they wanted to make a hit single off it, and I said, well, I believe that when I see it. And of course, they did with Candle in the Wind.
Now, following that tour, you went into the studio, and now we have Reg Strikes Back.
I was so miserable in 1987. I just thought I've got to go back into the studio and start work now. That's because, I mean, you go through periods of life when you are depressed and miserable, but this one was a king-size depression. And I thought, listen, go back to work. That's the only thing to do, get creative and then just, fight your way out of this. And I didn't go back in the studio and write mournful songs. I mean, there's only really two very slow songs on the album. One is Japanese Hands and one is Since God Invented Girls. And they turned out to be quite a positive album. And it kind of coincided with, I wanted to change direction as far as getting rid of the clothes, just changing. I knew I wanted to change things in my life. 18 years of becoming Elton John is kind of claustrophobic and it kind of strangles you and it chokes you a bit. And I didn't want to do that. And I don't think that necessarily reflects the music on Red Strikes Back. And I think in the albums to come it will. But just cleaning out my house and getting rid of everything that I've accumulated as being Elton John, kind of starting all over again, although not starting collecting all over again, is really important, because you want to run with the big boys. You don't want your career just to be singing Benny and the Jets, Crocodile Rock. You want to contribute something that's fresh or you think is fresh. And I think the album is, from that point of view, is a good, fresh album. But I think as far as the music, I think it will, the way I feel now, and I'm very happy with my life, will be probably reflected in the next couple of albums. But I'm more than happy with the Red Stripes Back album.
Well, I think what it's done is actually it's been, I've been close enough to you and your music that you really always have had this within you. You're always curious. You are a person who, no matter where you are or what time and space, whether you're on tour or whether you're in the studio, you're always listening to other people's music. You're listening to the new people. You go to see them. You want to see what they're doing. You're listening to the sounds that are happening. And if there is a wave of, I noticed that you didn't put any rap records on, but
no, I think I'm beyond that. I did have a feeble attempt at reggae once with Jamaica Jerk-Off. But no, I mean, that's just not that's a phenomenon, rap music, and it's just something I couldn't possibly, it's not my favourite kind of music, I must admit, but it's got, the kids love it, so I mean, I went to see the Beastie Boys in concert, and I really loved it, I must admit. I went to see, I've got to go and see this, they were with Run and DMC at the Greek Theatre a couple of years ago, or a year ago. And I didn't know what I was in for, and I had a ball. I was just looking at the audience and seeing everyone having such a good time. I really enjoyed it, and I mean, I would never have bet in a million years that I would have gone there and said I'm going to enjoy this concert. But you have to take a look. You have to see what turns these kids on. It's just. And I felt very young when I came out of that concert. I thought, I really enjoy this. And I hadn't been an ardent Beastie Boys fan. I don't listen to the album that much. But live, I really thought it was superb. I really enjoyed it. It was an occasion which I came out of smiling. And Run DMC also, it wasn't a violent occasion. And it was a time when a lot of people sort of associate rap music with violence. But it was not that at all. It was like one huge party doing that. You just have to check these things out. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I mean, that was one of the surprise things. I really enjoyed the concert.
Well, I think everybody, I remember you telling me about Duran before I knew anything about him, but you mentioned that as a group, you mentioned some of the things they were doing, and you talked about George Michael and his partner before as a twosome, and that he sort of, you were reminded of you and Bernie early on and all that, but you've always gone out and checked these things out, and so I think it's there's two acts coming. There's an album by Fairground Attraction that's coming out on RCA, which is probably one of the finest set of new songs anyone's ever written, I think. And the girl singer out that is wonderful. The album's called First of a Million Kisses. It's just a superb album. I've heard them, and I really like it. They're just striking. It's
and
so
they don't
different.
sound English, do they, or Scottish, or whatever they are. They sound. It's very Ricky Lee Jones, but more commercial. It's kind of there's the third song on the album. It's just on side one. It's just so beautiful. I was considering singing it on this tour, and I thought, no, that's their song. Let them break it. I mean,
They took me almost back into the music of the 40s and 50s, and yet they have that happy...
And it's modern, it sounds modern.
It's modern, and yet it's funky, it's just everything. I really like it.
Well, we play it before, in the interval between Wet, Wet, Wet and ourselves, we try and play the whole album. And I bought when I came out and did a radio tour, I bought 25 compact discs with me, and I just said, listen to this album. Because, I mean, they've had 2 hit singles now. I think she's pregnant at the moment. This is really a conversation about somebody else. But it's fabulous to hear things. I mean, just stunning music. And stunning songs just for a first album, and it's so simple and so direct. That's why I think Tracy's been so popular, is that she is so delightful to look at and so different for these kids that maybe haven't seen these things before. And it's just simple, direct songs, and brilliant. It's a breath of fresh air. It's lovely.
I was so surprised on the things from England when I first got a hold of Fairground Attraction, because it happened during a time of a lot of rap records and a lot of dance music. And all of a sudden, well, I just couldn't believe it. It was something so different, but you could tell it was just really there. I'm glad it's coming to America.
Well, if they aren't huge, if that album doesn't, if that album doesn't do well, I will set fire to every other thing I own. I mean, it's just, it's got to. I mean, please. I was going to say set fire to you, but no.
Well, that's all right, but not to your goodies.
I mean, it's just so wonderful. Anyway,
in Reg Strikes Back, you've done the studio album that you wanted to do, and put together some interesting songs, and I think it's one of those albums that's a lasting album because there are a lot of good songs, so that even though there was a single out before the album was released, I think you've got a number of singles. And it is Elton John, and it is, okay, you're talking about Reg, and you want to give Reg some time in your life, and that should be too.
Well, I mean, Reg basically was, I mean, I lived all my years as Elton John. I mean, as a kid, I didn't have much, as I say, of a particularly happy or much of a confident childhood. I lived. The Elton John success was really what I wanted to do all along as Reg Dwight. But I was never. I was either too fat or too shy to do it. So it was, I had an inferiority complex. So Elton John was like everything. It was like the comic book character that I always dreamed of being as a kid. So. I don't regret that. The Elton John thing is fine. It's just, I just have to, I just don't want to get tied down to singing Benny and the Jets, Yellow Brick Road, and I just had to clear myself of everything I've done as Elton John, which I'm very proud of. It's just a time now that I felt happy to be Reg again. I don't know why. It just, I hated that bloody name for so long. So, it's a tongue-in-cheek title, really, as well, because of the, I had a pretty miserable year, as I say, 1987 in England with the press and everything. So, and but it's just comfortable it's a comfortable time of my life. I'm 41, and I feel very good about myself. There are lots of blows to knock everyone down in life, whether it be music or anything, and you just have to fight back. You fight, and you have to keep your self-esteem going and your integrity. And I think it's time to put those away and start enjoying myself. And I've got a brand new band that I'm so pleased with. I've always wanted the Black Rhythm section. I've got these two guys, Romeo Williams on bass, and Jonathan Sugarfoot Moffat on drums, and the band just cooks. But we do a cross section. It's just we do lots of the orchestral stuff on stage, and we do lots of humping stuff as well. Humping stuff. But ironically, it's not the band that played on Red Strikes Back, which was a good band. But I needed to change that too. I mean, as you get older, you want to play with different musicians more. I should have done that maybe more in the past. I don't know.
Well, you did do sessions with other people, as a friendship thing. And you were talking about you as Elton John and as a solo person, the worldwide success of the EJ person, no matter what you were or whatever costumes you wore. There's just no question about it. I mean, you could go into major cities and sell out concerts without an album and do all those things. So I don't think that there's anything there, except that I do understand something from the outside looking in that maybe you should really think about more often, because people love Elton John because of the talent that you have. And I remember a concert you did with just one person on stage with you.
That tour with Ray Cooper in 1978, 77, something like that. Probably, I don't know what year it was, late 70s. We played smaller places because, but I wanted to play for 3 hours and get my confidence back as a musician and just leave the theatrics to Ray, which Ray was the one who did all the mad stuff, and I just sat at the piano and sang for 3 hours, and it proved to me, from an ego point of view, that you could do a show with just two people for 3 hours and make it entertaining. And it was also necessary to get my pride back, playing the piano and singing, and to be scared again. And it's always nice to be scared. I'm kind of not scared at the moment, but it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. You're going to die this week. I'm going from this tour. It's only a short tour. It's 6 weeks, just to get in the idea and the swing of it and see how the voice stands up. And so far, it's been fine. And then I'm going to Denmark to do a new album. I'm desperate to do a new album.
Right.
All right. So, Denmark? Why are you going to do? Well, there's a great studio over there called Puck, which I think George Michael recorded them. And I'm going to use this band. And when you play with new musicians, you just get that impetus. It's if you keep going and you're happy with life and you're not doing anything silly in your private life, then you can get this. We did it in the 70s, in the early 70s. We used to put out so much product, separate singles. We used to do tours, and it was easy. So I know the music's important, and I know that's great. one of the gratifying things is if an album doesn't do it very well, we have done concert tours where the tours are sold out. But we've tried also to play different places, except for New York, where I always play Madison Square Garden because I love it so much. For me, it's the best show in the world. But in other towns, you play different places, you gauge yourself, and you set new challenges. Or you come down and try and. I mean, I love to do a whole week one night. All this. I would just do a concert of B-sides. It'd be brilliant. And in this tour, I'm kind of eliminating. We're going on stage now and doing things that. We have 18 top 15 records that we're leaving out of the show because if you stuck doing those, I'm very grateful to them, etc. But it's time to move on. It's time to take that risk again and believe in the new album. So we do four songs, I think 4 or 5 songs for the new album. And you just have to do that. I just got to start leaving some of those old things behind. And then as I say that, and then there's a track on the new album called Mona Lisa's Mad Hatters Part 2, which is kind of, I think, the first song that's written Part 2 after the first song was on the Honky Chateau album. And it's a story of New York 15 years afterwards. A lot of people forget, of course, I'm rabbiting on, but Taupin is responsible for creating all these songs, and then I just put the music to them.
People don't really know that you and John were close. You were close for a lot of reasons, but you also shared some music together. When you did the album and had the little side wager.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about that side wager? No one really believes that, but I believe it was a true story.
It is a true story. It's a friend of mine, Tony King, who now works for Mick Jagger, worked for John Lennon at the time, and he got me to play on Walls and Bridges on Whatever Gets You Through the Night and another track. I made this thing. I said, well, if it gets to number 1, jokingly, it was a joking wager, but it was, I said, you can come and play with us on stage. It got to number 1, and John said, okay, I'll come and play with you. And he came up to Boston to see a gig, which frightened the life out of him because I came out dressed in a chocolate box, heart sort of bikini. And he said, my God, what I got into. But he kept it. He came. We got to be very close for about a year or so. We remained close. You don't have to call each other every day to be friends. Once you've got, someone and you're very fond of them, you never lose that. And he came on stage. He came to Caribou and played on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. He took my mother and father to the airport when they came over to see the Madison Square Garden gig. He took my band to the airport. We went with them to the airport. But John was, we had a great time together. And that was a true story. This Albert Goldman book has really upset me a lot because although there must be some facts that are right in it, I knew John for a year quite well. And yes, he could be crazy, but for me, the thing with John was he was so kind. And the Albert Goldman book on Elvis Presley made me furious because you read through it and you thought, for God's sake, give this guy a break. He can't have been all, no one is all bad, And then when Albert Goldman starts pontificating about Elvis Presley's music and John Lennon's music and this and that, I just don't have time. I won't read it, I won't read the Lennon book. And it's got in the Goldman book that apparently, because someone told me that John was taking cocaine before the gig and throwing up in the toilet before the Madison Square Garden. He was throwing up because he hadn't played before a crowd that big for God knows how many years, and he was nervous. He was. And we went to the Pierre afterwards, and Yoko was there, and John didn't know Yoko was going to be there. Yoko turned up with a gardenia for both John and I, and we went to the Pierre afterwards and had a nice evening. I think there was a bit of a scuffle. I think we got into an argument with a disc jockey, my stepfather did, and we sat with the guy who bends the forks over. What's his name? Uri Geller.
Yeah.
And we sat there, and he made us all draw something that comes into your mind, and we all had our bits of paper, and he drew it. I'll never forget that. All 4 of us sit there, John Reed, my manager, myself, John and Yoko, and we drew these things, and he just drew them. It's a night you'll never forget. And I know John was perfectly compass mentis during the whole thing. So, that's another inaccuracy against his book. There's a line in Marlon Brando, sounds like Goodbye Marlon Brando. Say goodbye to Jackie Collins, say goodbye to illiterate fools. And
while you're at it, you're doing an introduction for the song because we're going to be playing it. So, contrary to the title, it's not really about Marlon Brando at all.
No, it's quite a brilliant lyric, actually. It's very tongue-in-cheek. And in fact, God bless the Beach Boys, or Bruce and Carl, because there's a line, say goodbye to the... It's just, it's kind of an irreverent song. Goodbye, I'm a very big friend of Sylvester Stallone. I happen to like Sylvester a lot. He's got a great sense of humor himself. He's very much misunderstood, I think. And we just get along fine. And there's a line in it saying, I said, listen, there's a line in this song that says, say goodbye to Rocky 5, 6, 7, and 8. But it's, they could be saying goodbye to Elton John in it, as far as I'm concerned. It's all, every day now, it's just like, it's not saying because the films are bad or whatever, it's just saying that the pipe and the boring, who cares about Rockstar by Jockey? I mean, like, it's bomb, Overkill and me, It's and I was a part of that too. It's just gotten totally out of hand. Minimal talents are making millions of money, and it's and journalism, somebody like Albert Goldman can just go and destroy someone's life and who he never knew. I notice he always does people that are never there to defend themselves as well. Marlon Brando's kind of sums all that up. It's just kind of that part of the business per se makes me a little angry.
Elton John is my special guest and on tour right now, but you actually had a little kind of rehearsal playing with Eric Clapton and Mark Knopfler at the Prince's Trust just a couple of months back, didn't you?
We were in the original backup band for the Prince's Trust. I love Eric very much as a person. We have such a laugh, and Mark as well. And it's just, I've become quite friendly with Eric. And he's after all these years, it's kind of like being accepted now. I used to go and see them and think they were God, and playing with God isn't bad. It's really, and it's good fun. It's lovely to play. I keep harping back to it, but Live Aid, one thing Live Aid did was made people play with others and sort of made England, especially British musicians, much more or less snotty towards each other and much more nice and open. And it's sort of more people play with each other now, and it's great. It really, the British Live Aid, the difference was that there weren't any of these managers going around backstage saying, well, my act isn't going on here, and everyone just it cut the crap completely. And since then, nobody's been able to get away with it, which is brilliant. And it's also encouraged people to play more. Musicians are very shy characters sometimes. They say, oh, well, we don't ring you up because maybe you don't want it. You don't want me to play with you. And it's nonsense. It's the more you play with different people, the more ideas you get, and the more fun it is, and the more you learn what good musicians they are. You benefit from that.
Elton John's my guest in the world of rock, and we have the new album, Reg Strikes Back. And this is your chance. I'm going to turn it over to you again right now so you can play EJ the DJ and fill us in a little on a couple of the songs from the new album.
A couple of the songs on the album, we used the actual demo tape, the demo backtrack. I did, for example, a word in Spanish, and The Camera Never Lies, at James Newton Howard's house in Los Angeles when I was there on holiday this year. I wanted to write a couple of things, and so I called up James, he's got a studio, and I said, can I come over and write there? And so I recorded the backtrack there. As often happens on these things, you go and try and re-record them, and it's not the same. So luckily we recorded it on 24 track. So we used the original track more or less, or both, which is nice because you got the original. The only bad thing about doing demos sometimes and getting a great feel on them is the fact that when you go and record them again, to do the actual real version, it's never as good as the demo, because sometimes atmosphere, you can go for all the technical ability or the technical sounds in the world, but if a record's got atmosphere in the first 10 seconds, it sounds wonderful. It doesn't matter what it's recorded on if it's got atmosphere. I also saw Queen's Radio Gaga, for example, in the beginning of that record, and it wasn't a big hit over here, it wasn't a gigantic hit. It had so much atmosphere. When you came on the radio, you thought, what's this? It sent a little bit of a shiver up your spine. So, and Word in Spanish had that, and we tried to redo it, and it didn't work, so we kept the original backtrack, and we just added things on it.
Now I'm going to let you just keep rolling, and you're good as EJ the DJ, and I see on the album credits that a friend of yours, Pete Townsend, appears on the song Town of Plenty. How'd that come about?
Chris Thomas wanted me to record or write a couple of different extra songs, and so we recorded this whole album from 11 o'clock in the mornings till 8 o'clock at night instead of doing a night album, so it was fairly disciplined. And Town of Plenty, I went in the studio at 9:30, wrote the song, had demoed it, and then Chris came in at 10:15, liked the song, phoned up Pete Townsend, and we had the track down by 11:30. So but it was written at 9:30, and Pete Townsend had come in from his house in Twickenham, and the track was done by 11:30, which is quite extraordinary. But it was great fun to play, and it's a great track to play on in the studio, that track. Unfortunately, you can't hear much of Pete. He was on acoustic, but he was. He's always great to get on a session or to play because he's just such an up, Pete Townsend. A lot of people find him a down, and sometimes he can be, but I always find him an up in the studio. And that was kind of weird because the song was created and it was in the can in 2 hours with Pete Townsend playing on it. And there he was, he's writing this musical at home in Twickenham. And he hadn't played on a session for a long time, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. And of course, everybody else thoroughly enjoyed meeting him and playing with him.
We're talking about the new album, and there's a tune on here with a bit of like Beach Boys presence on it. How about that?
Well, as you know, Scott, I've always been a Beach Boys fan. I've always been influenced by the style of writing that of Brian Wilson, especially from the Good Vibration era. I mean, on things like Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, a lot of stuff from the Captain Fantastic album, Tower of Babel, Someone Saved My Life Tonight. I just love that style of writing. A Dear God, which was on the 21 or 33 album. And since Got Him Better Girls, Taupin, actually, I forgot about this story. Taupin gave me this lyric, and as you know, we don't collaborate. You know, we still never been in the same room at the same time as we've written a song, which is still, after 21 years, quite extraordinary. And I wrote this song at home. I got a little studio in my house, and I phoned Taupin up and said, listen, I finished it, and I'm so knocked out. In fact, this was the first song I wrote coming out of that depressive period. It's the first song. I mean, I write quickly. I can write a song in 10 minutes, usually. But this one I wrote all the way through without stopping. And my sound engineer, who's actually on this tour, Tom Pierce, who looks after the keyboards, I said, my God, did you get that down on tape? Because usually I record everything. And he said, yes. And I just went outside and just punched the air. I mean, it's quite a complex song chord-wise. And it was everything I wanted the song to be, having looked at the lyric and mentioning Brian Wilson and everything. And I phoned Taupin and I said, I've written this great ballad. And he said, oh no, he said, I thought that was going to be a rock and roll song. So, I mean, that often happens in our career, where I obviously get a lyric and write something that when he writes, he obviously has an idea in his head, because he's made his own albums now, he's musical, he plays a guitar. And it was just weird, and I was so enthusiastic. I said, I've written this great song, it's a great band, it's real Beach Boys. And he went, oh, really? I said, well, he said, I thought it would be a real rock and roll. I said, well, no, I just saw how the chorus went, and now I know how Brian Wilson, now I know what Brian Wilson meant. And I just thought, oh, with Brian Wilson, you've got to do, any chance I have to do a sort of like an ode to the Beach Boys, or pay tribute to that style of writing, or the records of the major records, and also Carl Wilson with Carl and the Passions and the Holland album and the Surf's Up. It's been very prevalent in my writing, so that was very odd that song took as long as it is on the record. It took to write, which is quite extra. I've never done that in my career before, and it's a complex song. Sad songs say so much, nearly got there. But this one was all the way through. And then, of course, after I'd done it, I thought, well, that'd be great for Carl to come over, and Bruce, and they did. And then they sang, and a lot of backing vocals on the album were done by Dee Murray and Nigel Olsson, which is part of my first band, and they did backing vocals, which is kind of nice as well, to include them on the album and have them as a part of the album. And it was just, I don't know, just nice just to, it's a very nice Taupin John song since Got Him Better Girls.
The Beach Boys with you singing backgrounds on Since God Invented Girls.
One of the deals for doing that was that I would give them, I wanted to give them their award at the Hall of Fame thing, which turned out to be a kind of a semi-disaster area. A night that we shall never forget, right?
Well, actually, it was a night of the industry, but I think the Beach Boys kind of, well, not really the Beach Boys.
Oh, God.
But Mike did do a few speeches for the world to hear, and I'm sure that he doesn't, that won't go down in history. It will, but...
Oh, it will. I mean, nobody talked about it. Actually, it livened up a very dull evening up to that point. It was brilliant. Great stuff. I mean, that's, you'll talk about that.
We should touch on that night, by the way. You gave the Beach Boys into the Hall of Fame, and Bruce did Dylan, brought Dylan into the Hall of Fame that night. That was quite a night, and
I've never seen so many guitarists on one stage before in my life. I was playing piano with Niels Lofgren was on electric piano, and I was on the Yamaha, and I was saying to Niels, I said, I'm off. And someone suggested doing Stop in the Name of Love, right, from Mary Wilson, because, I mean, that's a pretty hard song to know, that's off the back. I mean, when I said I'm off, because I don't know, I know the verse, but I don't know the chorus or whatever, or vice versa. And it kind of ground to a halt, and suddenly people coming out track doors with a guitar strum. And I got up, and Bill Graham pushed me back and said, you're staying here. And I said, oh, no. And then I did leave eventually, and I found out the great story about that night was that when Mick did Satisfaction, he found a pair of shoes on the stage, and he threw them away into the audience, and they were Mike Love's shoes.
Oh, they were mine.
So it kind of was an ironic end to the evening. It was an evening that was full of drama, and when you look back on it, was actually ended up to be a smashing evening. It was great.
You mentioned before, though, something about you have gone through a lot of changes, changed some of your things that you do on stage and what you're now doing. But I think really you are very full aware that the audience, the people who love Elton John, like all those different Elton Johns. You know, they like Reg and they like Hercules and
you can't,
they like Duck.
Yeah, you can't sort of desert them all the time. This tour, I've given them something new in the fact that I'm not playing the 9-foot Steinway. And I've been behind that for like 18 years. I've been playing that, and so I've always been sideways to the audience. I'm now front to the audience. I'm right in the middle of the band, and that's I'm just feeling my way with that at the moment. It's great fun. I can actually see the audience. I mean, I can see from both sides. Usually, the people behind me never saw me. That's a new thing. And just to play the Roland keyboard on stage is a new thing as well. And I'm not stuck behind a 9-foot monster, which meant I was 9 foot away from the band or the first member of the band. So that's kind of nice. They do like to see the comical side. They do like. I have to compromise a little bit for them because they're such loyal people. But I think the changes I've made on this tour by using the Roland, by going centre stage, by playing straight onto them. I've just cut down on the antics a bit, I just can't go. I mean, on the last tour, I knew it was definitely going to be the last time, and some of the outfits that I wore on the last tour, were quite hilarious. They kind of. By the time we got to Australia, we all rushed through the first set. And then the second set with the orchestra, which was wonderful, one of the most rewarding things I've done. And I changed into the Mozart type outfit with a beauty spot and everything. And that made you feel as if you were going on stage with an orchestra, which was great. But the ones beforehand, I looked like Tina Turner's grandmother in some of them. I remember some of those punk things. But I kind of knew that would be the last time, and I kind of felt ridiculous. But I love my fans as much as they love me. There's a lasting bond, and I will never, I know there's certain people come and hear the songs anyway. They like the costumes anyway. But most of the letters I get say, it doesn't matter about the cause we like the songs. And the reason I think that I've lasted so long, apart from being fairly good on stage, is because the songs, having written with Bernie for 21 years now, and with other people as well. And I would like to clear up, and I always get asked this question, well, Bernie and you now, when you split up at a time, we never split up at any time in our career. He moved to Los Angeles, I stayed in England. I happened to make an album with Gary Osborne called A Single Man, and at the same time he wrote an album with Alice Cooper. You have to have that leeway. If we hadn't had the leeway of writing with other people, we would never have lasted 21 years. I think it says in the program it's the longest ever lasting songwriting partnership that still exists. And I'm proud of that. But you have to, he's written #1 songs for other people, which I haven't done. He's achieved more in that respect than I've done. And so that's really important. The important thing is other songs and what they bring back to, in my life there are things. I remember My Sweet Lord being in a taxi in San Francisco and hearing that for the first time, and I got goosebumps. I just heard the opening and I thought, what is this? I remember being in Chicago and hearing Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones. I remember I'm Not in Love by Tennessee C in Amsterdam. There's various records to me that mean a lot, and that's what songs are about. They mean a certain time of your life. As an artist, you're very unaware of that sometimes, and you can't become too aware of it because otherwise you get too self-important. But it's the songs are the main part of why we've lasted, and the enjoyment and the relationship with Torpin, and just the willingness to fight and not give up, basically.
Now, right now, tomorrow, you're almost after this tour. You're headed to do a new album.
Yeah.
Do you have concept? Do you have idea and everything?
No, we're going to write it. I'm going to write it in the studio with the band sitting around like we did Honky Chateau. And that was done.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's going to be done. And so there might be a few more collaborators on the next album. But Honky Chateau was the first album where we went to France and we had the band sitting around. Bernie was writing the lyrics. I'd get the lyrics. I'd start playing, the band would join in. That's the way this one's going to be done. And
so 1989 you'll be...
1989, that's happening before Christmas.
Oh, great.
And then I finish it off just after Christmas. I do a European tour next year, a major American tour, a tour of the Far East, a tour of Australia. Then next Christmas in 1989 I have off again, and I'm going to South America, hopefully January, February of 1990. So I'm booked really till March 1990. I know what I'm doing. And this tour is kind of like a new band, see what it goes like, how the voice stands up, get me back into the way of touring. And then I'm off next year on a serious jaunt.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. It's been wonderful having a co-host and co-DJ, disc jockey. It's not the first time you've played EJ the DJ. You've done that.
I think I've co-hosted with you more than anybody. Well, I mean, I've never done that with so many disc jockeys.
Oh, only one other person ever did what you did, and that was John Lennon when he brought his rock and roll album out.
Yeah.
But you know, the interesting thing is when you get to the record library, when you get to the station, you know albums by the color of the back. You can pull an album out of the wall and you know what it is. So, I mean, really, he could go and
well, that's one thing I didn't get rid of. I didn't get rid of my collection of albums and music. I mean, music is still the biggest part of my life. I still love it. And there are periods of time where you don't want to hear any music because you've just been on tour. I mean, I don't go home and play the piano after I've, finished a tour. People say, you don't play the piano at home? I said, well, it's kind of like, being a fucking baker and coming home and starting cooking again, No, I don't. I go home and I just do different things. So, I kept my music and all my collections. Still got the biggest collection of 8 tracks. Want to buy an 8 track, Scott?